how our parents spoke to us is how we speak to ourselves.
Becomes our inner voice.
That becomes our inner voice, right? So if we didn't receive blessing, which I had challenge with as a youngster, that's become my critical, damning inner voice. And so this all ties back to that. And I've been facing this recently. I've been struggling with the critical inner voice, being pretty hard on myself, and just recently have popped through that other side of that a little bit. Thanks to my partner. She helped point that out for me and turn that around for me in a loving way.
All right. Welcome back to the next episode of the Ignite the King podcast. We have our guest, Mike Patterson, here today from our IgKnight Brotherhood, who you've seen on previous episodes. Welcome, Mike. Good to see you today.
Thank you, brother. Good to be back. Thanks for folding me back in.
Yeah. Well, we did get positive review and feedback on your episode, and lots of men wanting to hear more. So listen to your customers, right?
Can't imagine why, but let's do it.
Well, I'm worried we changed colors of your mic cover, so hopefully that had nothing to do with it.
I had to be on brand, man. Ignite Black. Here we go.
Nice. Well, we are going to talk about the king today, and specifically one of the pillars of kingship we talk around is legacy and being in service and what that really means to the men out there that are listening to this podcast. And I know you have a lot to share on this, and we're going to dive deep. We've been in our king season, right, in our Ignite Brotherhood, and we talk about these 4 pillars of kingship. There's sovereignty and order and blessing and legacy. We've been focused a lot on blessing, and now we're going to dive into legacy and specifically service. But maybe you can help tie us in and talk briefly about this experience of blessing, because I know it's so important. I haven't really devoted an episode to it yet, but give us a little bridge, because men hear that, and I know blessing is one of the places that men really lack and stifles maturity.
Yeah, I think that's a good place to start, that a lot of men haven't received a blessing in their lives. I know that I had a challenge with that as a youngster. It was a lot of discipline, a lot of just more like training. Felt like I was in formal training and didn't necessarily receive a decent amount of blessing. And as a result, it's become a love language of mine. Like, I need words of affirmation because I didn't get that. And as you say, Michael, give what you need, right? So
say more to that.
Yeah, I've been learning that, and I have work to do here for sure, especially recently. But that a lot of it to me comes down to the place of where we are personally. If I'm coming from a place of gratitude and appreciation and joy, then I want to give blessing. I want to give back to other people. And that can be as simple as, I micro this down to the everyday little things. Looking at the cashier in the eye and saying, thank you. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. Or even in business, somebody helps you out, sends an email back, replies quickly to you. Hey, thanks for that quick reply. I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
These things are micro blessings that I think build on each other.
They're all deposits.
And are more of a mindset. And then, of course, it spills over into those more important, if you will, or larger relationships of ours, our significant other, our children, our family. Are we giving them blessing and encouragement back? Telling someone you love them. That's a blessing. It is an act, it is an action, and it's also a mindset to me. Am I coming from a place of blessing?
Oh man, I love that. It's as I said, it's one of the reasons that men don't mature and their maturation process is stifled as children not receiving blessing. And on the other end of that is not being programmed with things that are destructive either, right? Like if you're not going to say anything kind about me, at least don't hurt me. I think that's a
right.
It might be a Dalai Lama thing, right? Where it's like, at least just don't hurt each other. And then it's like, what can you positively install there, right? Go ahead.
Yeah, my mother used to say, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say it at all. Classic Midwestern statement. And
right.
Yeah, there's first that, and then there's the blessing. And back to the pillars of kingship, there is first sovereignty and order, right? To me, and then there's blessing, because if you're not sovereign and you don't have order, you're probably not even in that place and in that mindset.
Next level, blessing. Right? Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
And they're in that order for a reason, right? That's why sovereignty is above order. Because if you're not sovereign in yourself, there's not going to be order in your kingdom. And if there's not baseline stability, you're not able to tap into the higher realm of blessing because it is more of a higher energetic. And then, of course, legacy, as we're going to talk about today, is sort of the ultimate expression of that. And, one of the words of legacy I love is stewardship. And that's really a powerful thing to think about, because when we're stewarding something, we're doing it while we're alive. Like we're bringing something forward. Often when we think of legacy, it's like, oh, what's there after I'm dead? And like, that's kind of depressing to think about. I've been tapping into mortality a lot this season. The king is all about mortality, right? There's the king will get like an old king, and the king dies and the young king comes. Like, you have to recognize that you're really on this ship for a little while as the captain, and that's what we call it, a kingship. So it's momentary, and we got to make the most of it while we're doing it. So stewarding something is a way to grow with that as we are going to that place of crossing over and bringing our children or the younger generation forward in what they're stewarding, what that legacy is. So, for a lot of men probably listening to this, have a family that they are stewarding something to then bring their family forward, right? So a big part of that is service, right? And giving back. And this part of this blessing kind of crosses both of these things. This blessing is to give back. And I was wondering if you can drop into that, because I know that's something that is dear to your heart and is a powerful aspect of this king energy.
Yeah, it's on my mind lately because I don't have children. So the idea of legacy a lot of times comes through our children and who our children are becoming, which is a huge blessing. But what other forms can that take? What other formats can that be in? And you're right, stewardship and service to me is the way I like to lead. As a leader, I like to lead by example and lead by serving others. When I get in trouble, on the flip side, the shadow of it, when I get in trouble is when I think I deserve, or I think somebody should be doing something for me, or this kind of righteousness that I get in.
Any other men out there listening feel a sense of righteousness from time to time?
Right.
Raising my hand if you're listening only.
So raising my hand as well. So again, coming from a mindset and a place of service. Who am I serving? How am I serving? How am I giving into this container or this vessel or this person, rather than what am I getting from it? That affects all pieces of my life, my work, my relationship with my family, even in the more community-oriented things I'm doing to try to serve my community and my fellow man and my larger or local community as well. How am I have to be in a mindset of service to do that, but to give in the larger contexts, but even in our our smaller or not smaller, but our more close relationships. Mm-hmm. Do I have a mindset of service, and how am I serving these people, growing them, rather than, like I said, righteous, what can I get, what am I getting?
Can we double tap on this in relationship? Because I think this is going to be relevant for a lot of men out there.
Yes.
How often are we as men going into a relationship for what we can get rather what we can give? Some need we want fulfilled, whether it be words of affirmation or physical touch or anything else, where it's like, what can I get right now versus what am I giving? And I think this is important to explore, because I'm raising my hand. I'm sure you are. And lots of men out there really need to look in the mirror here, because this is definitely an area where we need to clean this up as men.
Even down to the expression, and we get asked, or people get asked quite often at the beginning of a relationship, do you love them? I wrote an article on this once. That paradigm, typically when we hear that question, do you love them? At least previously where my mind was, is what am I getting from them? Flipping that on its head, or something about them, like, do you love something about that person, et cetera, et cetera. Flipping that on its head. Are you loving that person? Do you love them? Are you actively loving that person? Eric Fromm says love is a verb.
Yep. I'm about to say
love is an action. And service. Love is love. Love is service. So in your relationship, if you're loving that person, there's a level at which you're serving them. Now, some men will get into the framework of, oh, I'm being subservient. I am putting my needs underneath that person, et cetera, et cetera. Not saying that.
Clearly. Thank you.
And typically, if we are actively loving someone, we are getting back what we're giving in
10 or 100-fold.
Exactly. in spades. So in relationship, flipping that paradigm right there for me is huge and has been huge. Am I serving this person? Am I loving this person? Because if I am, I'm probably getting it back and the relationship's probably flourishing.
This also falls under the title of provider in a relationship, whether that's financial or otherwise. You are providing the safe container for the relationship. I really want to parse down this service thing. Sometimes we hear that word a lot in different ways, and service could be thought of like, oh, I'm giving away some free service or something, where it's like this void that never comes back to me. And it's to recognize that your relationship at whatever level, if you're married or otherwise, is a sacred container, and you're serving that container. And not to sound too like ethereal about it, it like is an energetic container. There is what you are pouring into. And that pouring into does need to come from a place of like, how am I making this place better? Because then as you both are doing that, what you get to synergize together is way greater than just the sum of the two. So it's like, when we come with the mindset of what could I get out of this, it's obviously coming from a lack mentality. And it's like, I'm going to give to get and just enough so I get what I need. And those relationships just don't last, frankly. Especially you do start putting children and things in the mix where it stresses a relationship. And if it's built on that kind of foundation, it's definitely going to fall apart, because children are going to require a lot of energy on so many levels.
I like the initial, I like all of that. And I like the initial piece and context that you put it in around safety and the sacredness of the relationship. I've learned this lesson through our brotherhood and through my relationship recently, is that if my partner doesn't feel safe, and lately I've fallen a few times where she hasn't felt safe, then nothing is growing in that garden. It's like the soil that I need to tend now and get to 10 is like a soil of safety. And if that safety exists, then other things are going to grow. And for me recently, that's been a huge lesson. And that's what love looks like. That's what service looks like in my relationship right now, is tending to that garden so that it feels safe. It feels approachable. It feels good and juicy and vibrant, and it has to feel safe.
Yeah. Well, it's like those two first pillars, right? Of sovereignty and order. There needs to be a certain level of safety. If Mike's hitting on is such a powerful point, because if your partner doesn't feel safe, it's like nothing else is happening.
Right. Right. Right.
Basically, we just erase the board because nothing else is happening until that is achieved. And all the things
I like that analogy. It's like the soil. Like if the soil isn't there, you're not growing anything in that soil. You have to have vibrant soil. And I feel like the safety and the protection of the space is that's our duty as men, as the gardeners. Like that's our duty. I was talking with a friend this weekend also about the feminine coming forth and women coming into power. And we were talking about more in a political setting, but I was saying, hey, that's not at the sacrifice of men's power. That is a little bit of a paradigm shift in that our power is to be used to protect the walls and to allow for the garden to grow. That's where we get to as men set the standards, the boundaries, the safety, all of that, so that that garden can grow. And that's where a lot
Would
of
you
times
say you're stewarding a garden?
You're stewarding the garden.
Might have something to do with your legacy.
Yeah, well, different. Yeah, and different. In a gardening situation, I've never worked on a farm, but different people have different roles, right? And our role is make sure the coyotes aren't getting in, and protect the soil and grow the soil and plant seeds where you need to plant
and tend to them.
Yeah, exactly. You're not one and done.
Yeah, and speak blessing into them. There's a whole book, The Secret Life of Plants, right? We know that like we've seen experiments where seen like school projects where they like curse at one plant and say thank you to the other. And like a month, one is like vibrant and growing. The other's like all janky and dead. And, we've done through rice experiments and different things where, the words we speak are powerful, and the blessing your words. So if blessing doesn't resonate with you, men, like really, it's just your words. And that's what you're stewarding.
Mm-hmm.
So energetically, you're stewarding your reputation, how people feel around you. And you're in the literal, you're planting these seeds and building the walls and keeping your kingdom safe so that you have a legacy that's going to live on in whatever way it wants to express itself. But you are actively pouring into it.
Yes, and I just thought about back to the garden analogy. The male energy is typically like a sunshine, sun energy. Your words are your sunshine. It's your blessing. The garden needs sun in order for things to grow. And like you said, if there's not good sunlight, if there's not any sunlight, it's not going to grow. So what blessing are we speaking into that? That is our sunlight. That's what's coming into other beings and either feeding them or not feeding them. So we're tying all these pieces together with blessing, love, legacy, all of that.
I can feel men out there that just because they haven't experienced that, it almost like it's not landing, because it's like, how do I do that if I've never experienced that? And often men, and ourselves included, will tell ourselves beliefs and stories that are actually hurtful, right? We'll replay tapes and patterns of like the not good enoughs and you shithead and whatever, not cool enough, or whatever the story is. And how often are we repeating that? And we talk about the physiology and the mind keeping us alive, and it's not there to make us happy, and how much of the focus or the conscious focus is around what's potentially harmful. And we replay these stories. So it is the work to not only slow down and eliminate, and well, there's really not eliminate, but stop that tape from playing and start to put in the new one of blessing. And to your point of, we got to give what we need, we got to give to get, starting that practice of like, hey, just looking the cashier in the eye and saying, have a nice day, and actually meaning it, and just seeing the response and starting to register and build proof to yourself that this is what this feels like. So this is obviously a process and a practice, but really want to speak to the men out there that like never heard that. And in fact, heard the damaging, traumatic things.
Yeah, and I think you had said it, Michael, and I've seen it previously, and I've been facing this recently with my own life, is that self voice, that self talk. And I believe, remind me what the saying is, but how our parents spoke to us is how we speak to ourselves.
Becomes our inner voice.
That becomes our inner voice, right? So if we didn't receive blessing, which I had challenge with as a youngster, that's become my critical, damning inner voice. And so this all ties back to that. And I've been facing this recently. I've been struggling with the critical inner voice, being pretty hard on myself, and just recently have popped through that other side of that a little bit. Thanks to my partner, she helped point that out for me and turn that around for me in a loving way. I don't want to circumvent or jump over the fact that, hey man, we need to do work to address that inner voice and what's going on there. It's not just about overcoming that by saying thank you to the cashier. There's a lot of work to do in that part, and I don't want to belittle that, because that's a very important piece. And that's the on the ground work that we all need to do, whether it's through men's work, any other kind of work, to address those things and that inner voice, so that we can then come from a place of blessing, right? So all of this precludes, doing that work and like actually being in that so you can do that work. And a lot of times in our brotherhood, we see men in those stages of, they're still early in that stage of that negative self-talk, and that how that's reflecting in their relationships, and probably not growing that garden in their relationship and all of that. So,
well, we got to make the unconscious conscious, right? Like a lot of these things that we tell ourselves or how we operate, we're not even aware of until someone actually reflects it back. And often that could be met with some resistance, notably, right? And denial. And I'm saying all these things is how I used to handle things. It's like, it's hard to commit to looking at yourself and recognizing there might be some shit to own. Now, I hope for the men that are listening to this podcast or have been listening for a while, like you get, like there is work to do. This is a way to do it. IgKnight, we give you plenty of lenses and tools to access this self-awareness, this heightened self-awareness, like these conversations. To even think that blessing is such an integral part that helps me live my stewarding and my legacy is, who's talking about that really in a way that's digestible? So, but these are the foundations, and like saying, I want that. So I'm willing to look at what is uncomfortable and the ways I've been just taking, kind of bring it back to relationship and saying, what am I getting out of this? For how am I serving this thing? And whether you're serving your relationship, serving your body to get healthier, serving the business that you're working in, like, are you, and this is probably a big one for business, because there's a lot of men that work out there that don't really, not work out, but work in business that maybe like are just doing it for a paycheck and don't have an energetic commitment to the company they're working for, even their own company. I just got off a call with a man I work with privately where he's building this big company, this big vision, and he's like losing sight of it already. And just like, fuck, am I just doing this for a paycheck? And we have to consistently check in about that. So again, in relationship, how am I serving this relationship? How am I serving my business? So in Ignite, it always comes back to the man in the mirror, right? Like it's never those actual circumstances. They're just there to reflect to us where our work needs to be done.
Yeah, and it's good to contextualize this in the context of all of the archetypal work that we do, in that we're talking about king energy, we're talking about blessing, we're talking about legacy. There is a level of finalization, if you will. Like the king energy is almost like the crowning energy. Literally, it's the crowning energy, right? So I put the context in place before, because in our lifespans, we get to go through and do all the work of the lover and the magician and the warrior to get to a place where we can now give blessing and can now concern ourselves with legacy, because we've done that other down on the ground work, right? So it's important for everyone listening out there to realize, like, you're not just going to go straight into king energy. You're not just going to go straight into blessing. You're not going to go straight into legacy. There's a needing to earn that. There's a needing to do the work to get to that place. Hopefully, we all get to that place, that king energy, and concerning ourselves with legacy and blessing. And I've seen lives and men who that's not the paradigm and that's not the focus. And then they get to that stage in their life and it's freaking empty.
Well, this is why we're building awareness of it now. So when it comes in the natural arc of our existence, we're prepared for it, right? As a man, you're a boy and a prince and a king and an elder. So it's like there is a natural timeline to when we embody the king energy, and it's something we can tap into on a daily basis. So it's a yes and in that respect, right? Of like, how do I integrate this more in my life and understand how it's working now, so that when I do get to that time in my life, it is like even more evolved.
Yeah, and there's elder wisdom even in keeping that framework and having that context, period. Like having the context of, oh, eventually it's not about me. There are times when it's about you. It is. You need to focus on yourself.
I heard this before.
And do your stuff. And then, hopefully in your latter years, you have the gift to be able to give back and serve. And yes, you can do it now as well. There's a micro and the macro. And that's what piece that I love about the archetypes as well, is that there is seasonality to it and larger arcs to it. And then there's these small circles of all of them happening wherever you might be in your life and in your development.
Man, we are hitting so many beautiful things. This it's not about you piece, I think, is so important, because one of the number one ways to access king energy, especially as Moore and Gillette talk about it, is you disconnect from the ego, which is a big statement because men are driven by their ego in so many fashions. And it's just like, well, how do I just drop an ego? And so it's when you make it about others, that's how you drop your ego. When you're in service, it's egoless, right? I'm giving for the sake of giving and not with the expectation of return, right? So in a relationship or a business, when you're not making it about you and you're making it about the other, how can I help this person win? That's coming from less ego. I don't think there's a thing as no ego. I don't like when we say, oh, this is a conscious no ego event. I'm like, bullshit. Like there's going to be some ego, and a healthy amount is important, but really recognizing like, okay, how am I here to serve others truly right now? And I think events, and I attend a lot of different events, that it is moving in that direction where everyone is there to help you. At least the ones I go to, everyone is genuinely there. Like, how can I help you? Like whether you're the 9-figure CEO or the person that's just starting out, like they want to help each other, they want to serve each other, and everybody wins. And that's the name of the game. Everyone actually wins bigger when we all come from that place. So disconnecting from that ego really is the sort of way to start tapping into this king energy and blessing and service that we're talking about.
Here's an interesting context that I heard in a class recently, because the teacher of the class said this and I was pretty blown away by it, which was somebody brought up the concept of ego. And she said, well, are you talking about the Buddhist Eastern ego, or are you talking about the Western Freudian ego?
Right.
And this is important because for me, it was like, oh, okay.
Man, you're about to get some Mike P wisdom. I hope you guys are ready. I'm getting my already. I got my notebook. Go ahead, brother.
There's both, and we need both. And this is very applicable to the subject at hand, meaning we need a firm sense of ourselves and who we are in a healthy, balanced way, and then we can let it go.
Say that again.
We need a strong sense of ourselves and who we are in a core way, and then we can let that go. We can then release the ego. Just like you said, these people in your mastermind class, they're at a point probably where they're pretty established and they're secure in who they are.
Right.
And now they can let go of the other pieces of what would then be considered like the Eastern Buddhist ego, like the things around the ego that are not healthy, right? So that's a yes and to me too, right? And very applicable to what we're talking about here, doing the down on the ground work to work yourself out in your own self so you have established and are comfortable with who and how you are. And then you can give of service, because if you're not, you're probably going to either get lost and spin out into some stratosphere, or you're just not going to do it. You're not going to want to do it, right? So that distinction for me was really helpful in the last 6 months or so, and helps me.
Thank you. That last 6 months just saved the man like 6 years of searching.
I hope so. Yeah, I hope so. Because it's not about, like you said, Michael, we're never totally dissolving our ego unless we are taking a lot of mushrooms or
living in Tibet for a dozen years,
or we're dead, right? So, yeah, and it's important in the realm of service. It's super important, because are we coming from that place? Are we secure in who we are? Are we giving from that place? Are we trying to get, like you said?
You know, one of my mentors, Donnie Epstein, the developer of network spinal analysis, he talks about seasons, and we talk about someone in our group too, like discover and transform and awaken, right? When you're in discover, it's like, why not me? I don't exist here. And they're like, I'm nobody. And then when you go into transform, you're like, I'm a somebody, and I'm going to show you who I am. And then you get to this awakened, heightened state. You're like, I'm a nobody again. And like the goal is to be a nobody, but yet, we're all struggling with being a nobody and thinking that being somebody is the thing, and it's not. And these are paradigm shifting contexts that we have to be open to, first of all, and can just fucking change everything. Everything I've ever learned in personal growth and this work and energetics in the body, it's like, it has to be paradigm shifting. Like, it's not just like a little, it can be a little tweak, but it's like, you have to really be willing to look at things from a very different perspective. And it's like, what do you mean I'm going to get more if I give more? Like, just from a logical sense may not make sense, right? But from an energetic sense and a spiritual sense, it's like, well, of course, right? You're putting into the system. Donnie Epstein also says, like, the amount of you are rewarded or punished for the amount of energy you either add or take away from the field. Like, it is this responsibility as a man, as a king, as someone that's building and stewarding something, is to make it better and leave it better than we found it. We talk about that a lot in our Brotherhood. It's like, from the homes that we rent for our immersions to our home in our lives and our communities that you were referencing and your local community. It's like, fuck, is it better because I was there? If I was to leave here, is it better, or did I take from it? That math doesn't math.
Yeah, I love that framework and that context. And that can be used and applied every day. Every day. We can use that lens to look at our lives. And am I improving this day? Am I improving that person's life? And then, yes, on the macro, how am I leaving this better? And I work in I work in advertising and marketing, and there's all kinds of metrics, right? There's all kinds of measurements. And I think that's a key metric. That's a key KPI right there. I don't know how we measure it in a quantitative fashion, but it's an important one for sure.
Well, I think finances are a reflection of that, right? You are rewarded for the amount of energy that you give out. So if we want to tie this into business, because so many men out there, entrepreneurs or business owners like yourself, where it's like, okay, like how do I bring value to the marketplace, and do I get rewarded back bigger than what I gave into the system versus taking? And the key variable here is time, because you may not see that reward in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
And this goes back to the patience thing that I believe you were referencing earlier in the episode. And it's like, can you trust that God's delay is not God's denial, and actually something bigger is building toward a receivership? And if it wasn't, would you be okay with it now? That's a recent thing I've tuned into.
Say more about that. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, well, we all pray for things and we all want things to be better. And it's almost like conditional, like I'll believe in it because it works. Well, it's like, can you just be happy with what's been given to you already? And anything else is just icing on the cake. The fact that you're here, the fact that you're alive, like can you be reverent for that now? If you were giving nothing else, could you still stand in that gratitude? Which ironically makes us open to receive more, because we're not putting condition on it. And I'm not saying it's easy, and this is definitely my work, my next level work, but it's like, wow, because I pray for things, I have goals, I have things I write down, I want to see them happen, and I'm trying to condition my nervous system and do all the rituals around it. And those are important. I think we need to have those.
Yeah.
And it's out of my hands, literally.
Yeah. Couple comments. So one, I went to a Passover Seder on Saturday, and part of the prayer was about what you just said, Michael. Basically, if it were just this, would we be grateful? If it were just this, would be grateful? If it were just this, would we be grateful? And it was referring to the Jews coming out of Egypt and all the things that happened, right? But it went all the way back to like the first thing that happened. If it were just that, would you be grateful? Would you have praised God at that point? And then all of these other things happen. So that's the first thing.
I have to confess, I did hear this concept in church last weekend, or Palm Sunday, around the first Passover. So you're dialed in, brother.
There you go. And funny that you're a Jew and I was born up Christian, and we were at opposite places. So not opposite, but like we were at one another's. That's great.
And she had the same birthday.
Yes, exactly. Just by the way. And the other piece is back to my work and what I do in my work. When people quite often ask me, like, "Hey, this hasn't improved." Like, well, what time frame are you looking at? What's the time frame over which you are looking at this data? Is it 2 weeks? Maybe not seeing a lot of difference. Is it 2 years? Well, you're probably seeing some difference. I just sold an asset that I've owned for 25 years.
Wow.
And it's there it goes. But over what time frame are we looking at change? Because God, spirit, universe, whatever, first of all, time doesn't exist, really.
There'll be a follow-up episode, people.
Second of all, our lives are a blip in time. So what time frames are we looking at here for change and improvement and all of that?
He's going King's paradox, folks. We're definitely seeding some energy for some future conversations, I feel like. And as we do actually get to the end of this episode with a few minutes left here, we always like to bring it into practical, tactical things. So, we've mentioned obviously a few times of blessing and speaking and looking into people's eyes and cashiers and things like that. And so much of we talked about has been contextual and framework. So anything you want to leave the listener with as far as a way to transduce those conceptual things into an embodiment that they could practice and work with?
Yeah, and I can work on this myself, so I'm speaking to myself as well, but it does start, and has in the past for me, started with a gratitude practice. If I recount what I'm grateful for on the daily, like you said, Michael, if it was just now, would you be happy? Would you be satisfied? So gratitude practice, and there are groups and organizations that just focus on gratitude.
Yeah.
And if you don't know what a gratitude practice is, you can go out there and Google a bit and you can find it. But starting from that place of being full and being grateful for where we are. That's basically a daily recounting of, man, I'm grateful for this, this, this. You'll be surprised at how many things you have. And then from there, I think blessing and service overflow from that place, right? So start with gratitude, start with where you are, start with things you're grateful for. And you'll find, coming from that mindset and that point of view, that service will spill over. You'll want to give back. You'll want to do those things, just like acknowledging the bus driver or person on the street, whatever. It could be that simple.
Yeah. And to dovetail on this, because I think this alone is enough, even if it's just getting a journal out and like, what am I grateful for today? And I always say that like, the more you bless, the more you'll have to be blessed for, and you'll realize like how long the list is, from just having a roof over your head to food in the refrigerator to clean clothes to healthy body, a walk outside, whatever it may be. Like, start where you are. For some of you, that list might feel a little less than longer, but just start where you are, and it will appreciate what you appreciate. Appreciates, right? Talk about in finances, appreciation. Like, let your assets appreciate. But if you're not making any deposits, then you don't have any assets. You got to make deposits into that bank, right? If you're always focused on what you're lacking or what you don't have, I mean, this is like personal growth 101, but it's like, then you will have more of that. That will be the consciousness around anything you have. You may have everything you need, but feel like it's nothing. So that is the paradigm shift of really looking at from a state of abundance, of the blessings, and start to practice it. Maybe you see trash on the street, no one's around, but you just pick it up anyway because it's the right thing to do and it feels good in your heart. Not because someone's going to say good job or attaboy. You do it because that's what it feels right to do it. And that can
talk about leaving a place nicer than you found it.
Literally, right?
Right.
We had a man once in our brotherhood that would talk about like when you see trash on the ground, for 3 levels of it. Are you the one that left the trash? That's one level. Do you see it and walk by it but don't pick it up? Or do you see it, pick it up and throw it out? Like, what level man are you? And whether that's looking out for others around you, you talk about like not having children, but I know you, Mike, and I'm sure when you're out in public and there's children around, like your eyes are wide open and your situational awareness is very high because that's what you've been trained to do. And as men, we need to train to do that. So this can show up in a lot of ways. A lot more to share on this. But any final thoughts as we close this out, brother? Thank you for
just appreciate you, brother, giving you blessing for doing this and doing what you do and bringing this work to men and to all those people out there. And appreciate you folding me into this piece of it. Love doing this and love chatting with you on these subject matters. And hopefully for you out there, if you're listening to this and it's resonating, dig deeper and dive in more. And appreciate you, Michael, for doing what you do.
Yeah, thank you. And Mike, how can people find you? I know you're on Medium and have your article series that talks about a lot of these things if men want to dive in deeper. We can also put in the show notes.
My handle across most socials is mpattyfly. So at mpattyfly is on Medium, Instagram as well. I'm not a big Facebook guy, but they can find me there.
Yeah. Well, Mike shares a lot of wisdom and definitely in the written word as well. So definitely check him out. And as he said, he'll be on further episodes, diving in deep into some of these really important topics that we teach about in Ignite. Until the next time, have a beautiful rest of your day. Share this episode far and wide. Have a beautiful day. I hope.